Mock trial of the United States versus Shune. The participants are Ashley McKnight, Rockamy Carpenter, Brenna Landis, Tyler Heflin, Kelroy Johns, Kautar Majubi, and Marla Cooper.
Okay, first we're going to hear from the prosecution.
Okay.
Stand if you like.
No, thank you. Good morning, possible jury members, foreman, and defense. I'm here today to explain to you how I will prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, the guilt of the defendants and how their defense of necessity does not stand for this case. Therefore, the defendants will be held responsible for acts of obstructing activities of the Internal Revenue Service Office in Tucson, Arizona, and failing to comply with an order of a federal police officer. In December of 1989, the defendants and some 30 others entered the IRS office in Tucson while chanting, "Keep America's tax dollars out of El Salvador." Then they proceeded to splatter fake blood over the contents of the office, disrupting the office workers' day and more than likely causing emotional distress to the office workers. The defendants continued to do so even after a federal police officer had requested them to desist multiple times. We conduct because it will prevent the occurrence of a harm that is more serious. There are 4 requirements to meet in order to qualify for a defense of necessity. The first, the accused must also prove that they anticipated a direct causal link between their conduct and the harm to be avoided, and that the accused had no legal alternatives to violating the law. All 4 of these requirements must be met in order to qualify the use of this defense by the accused. The defendants do not meet these requirements. To begin, the most immediate harm facing the defendants was a policy of the United States government. Legally, government policy cannot stand as an imminent harm, especially not policy not specifically directed towards the defendants. This knocks down the first and second requirements to the necessity defense. The third requirement is refuted by the fact that there was no direct harm to the defendants through foreign policy conduct by the United States government. The defendants participated in an act of indirect civil disobedience. This is defined as civil disobedience that challenges the legitimacy of a given act or policy through the violation of a law that is not itself alternatives that the defendants could have chosen over an act that damaged property and promoted civil unrest. I will also ask you to consider the precedents that allowing the necessity defense in this case would create. Property damage and civil unrest are not justified in order to protest a policy of government. There are other means of protest that would convey the message just as clearly while not breaking the rule of law and civil conduct. Thank you.
All right, now from the defense.
I'm here to prove that my clients are innocent and not guilty of the crimes they are accused of. First off, because these were ongoing protests, this wasn't the only day of the protest, and no one gave them the chance to actually hear them out. They just stood outside the protest day in and day out. Secondly, that they say that you can't challenge a policy. American tax dollars are going to the deaths of 75,000 civilians in El Salvador. Not to mention 1 priest that was murdered as he was giving his sermon, 3 Jesuits, and a housekeeper and a maid who were all killed by American tax dollars from the El Salvador Civil War.
No benefit?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question I have is, does the defense of necessity apply in cases where indirect civil disobedience is present? So mind you, indirect civil disobedience is when they're not actually protesting the tax law. They're protesting what they're doing with the taxes. So based on that alone, does that defense apply here? Well, first, Kelroy.
Yes, necessity is essentially utilitarian defense, and we see where it applies in this case because there is some moral harm that comes with policies that are being implemented, and I think there is a strong case for that, and the defendants are standing on firm footing in this regard.
Okay, Marla.
I have to disagree with Kelroy. I think that the prosecution made valid points, and the defendants did not meet the criteria for the necessity defense. I mean, they were not in any imminent danger. And did they really pick the lesser of two evils in their actions? I don't think so. I mean, they could have escalated through, proper political chains and not, lower themselves or society for that matter by going in and destroying government property. I mean, in my mind, there's no way that's justifiable. I mean, surely, we can all agree that the deaths of the Americans and that was really tragic. And I mean, but there's no way that them going into that office and throwing paint, that looks like blood, is going to bring the Americans back or, help their cause any.
Channels. But then we have to bear in mind, though, that is this plea of necessity defense, is it relevant in this case? I dare say we could make an argument, of course, that they could have protested these government policy by other ways. They could have written to their congressmen in Arizona.
Right, and they did.
And certainly they have expedited that route in certain cases. But I'm saying here that the question here, does the defense of does necessity defense, the plea of necessity defense, does it stand in this case? And I'm saying yes, because here what these defendants are doing is that they are trying to avert some greater harm with the protests in the Aris department.
That's a really good point.
Right, he does make a good point.
And I think that the argument can't be built around whether or not they used other various channels and were other various channels available to them. That's not the meat of the matter. The meat of the matter is does the application of necessity defense applies, and I dare say.
The question that is in my head was, were the defendants in imminent danger? And they were not.
They were not, but they were petitioning for those that were, because, well, first let's get to one of Kelroy's points before I get to the rest of you. One of Kelroy's points was, it says that there were no other legal alternatives to violating this law. Now, they did, I have that the defendants sought to explain that they had petitioned their elected representatives to change U.S. policy towards El Salvador on various occasions, but they were not met with a positive response.
So if they didn't like the answer, they're gonna go right.
Well,
Yeah.
now, but that to me,
right,
that
right,
satisfies
yeah.
the fourth prong, because that is the only legal alternative, is to petition the representatives. There's nothing else you can do. So to me, that satisfies that prong, because what else can you do?
You cannot go and throw paint on government property.
I have to disagree with you, sir. I'm sorry. First of all, we have to see what did he do, like according to the prosecution. Yeah. Okay. He splashed simulated blood on the counter. He obstructed the officer operation, and he refused to comply with the orders from federal police officer. Is that the right way to protest? I'm sorry. Is that the right way to protest? I don't see it the right way to protest. There is another way to protest. Protest peacefully. Just put a band around your arm, or just go outside and protest. Yes, the right to assembly is protected by the Constitution, but the destroying and obstructing the IRS job is not protected by the Constitution. I don't see that. And I don't see that Shkun was an imminent danger. I don't see that.
No.
So what y'all
I
are
don't
saying
see it.
is that it's less harmful to kill 75,000 civilians than it is to throw fake blood on food.
He took it there. He
Moral.
went there.
But that's a moral question.
Yeah, but that's
Right,
more
but
concern.
I
The
think
point the point I'm making here
That's what the
is
necessity defense is.
there is a line between
I think it does
civil
have
and civil disobedience and indirect disobedience, and we are forgetting that. What we are talking about here is a necessity defense. Do
Does it apply to
does it
indirect?
apply
It
to
does.
does it apply to this case where even though these people are not directly protesting this whole thing, this government policy doesn't affect them directly, and it does affect the El Salvadorans and Americans who were caught in the crossfire. Does the Necessity Defense Act covers them in this case?
No,
That's a
it's not.
question. That's a
It's
question.
No, it is not.
Not in this case, though.
When it
Because
comes-
as citizens of the United States of America, you are obliged to follow the rules of your country and to maintain civil rest and not promote civil unrest.
Exactly.
Right, but one thing you have to keep in mind though is when it comes to indirect civil disobedience, the necessity defense can apply. It just makes it a lot more difficult about that. Like, did they choose the lesser of two evils?
Definitely not.
No, not at
Definitely
all.
not. I mean, you can just go and protest. Yes, you have the right to
They
protest.
protested and they got
Protest
no
doesn't
action.
matter.
Grassroots
No action
But
was
won't, but
brought.
wouldn't that be the lesser of two evils in a sense? And now you have to keep in mind, because all of these people, they had links to El Salvador itself. Like a lot of them, they went and they worked in El Salvador. They witnessed this going on. So, I mean, just to play
The
devil's
precedent
advocate.
that sets, though, is
Exactly.
not correct and it's not lawful.
We are
But you
forgetting-
still have to
I think
look
it's
at the war
version
in
of the
something.
We're
necessity
forgetting
defense.
something.
You know,
That what led to all the civil war in El Salvador was protest. Protest might lead something more severe than just.
But you know, I made this argument, and this is the argument that I'm gonna make. The argument I'm gonna make here is that these people were directly charged them for a lesser crime. They could have charged them for disturbing the peace. What I'm saying here.
They
that-
did.
Yeah, then and
That's
that,
obstruction
yeah,
of
okay.
yeah, they should have
federal
done that.
office.
And then
And they should not appeal that.
Yeah, but-
Yeah, that's what the whole case was about.
but hold on. I'm saying here that the necessity defense comes into play because these people were actually directly affected. They were taxpayers.
It was
It
their
was
money.
their money
Their
money.
going
That's
into El
our
Salvador.
money. Our
Under the
taxpayer
Fifth
money
Amendment, under the Fifth Amendment, they have that right, you know.
Yes, they do have that right, but
To protest
The
the
case-
government sending their money over into El Salvador to fund a civil war.
we're paying for that.
Right, because
Yeah.
something else that
We're
needs to
paying
be.
for the El
I
Salvador
understand.
Civil War.
Yes,
That-
yes, I understand. I take the
Which is
prosecution
less
point,
money.
but I have to side with the defense. I have to say that the Necessity Defense Act, these people were directly impacted by this particular policy that was implemented by the American government because it was their monies that were taken out of the United States and sent to El Salvador to fund the civil.
were charged with not in compliance with the police officer. That's what the charge was. So I would argue that the self-defense the self-necessity, the defense necessity may apply to this case if they were charged with something else other than non-compliance with a police officer. That's my argument.
What the defense was saying about the El Salvador, like if it's okay to splash blood, and then the opposite of killing 75,000 people. Well, those people were not U.S. citizens, so really they couldn't even protest in their defense, really, because they weren't Americans, so they couldn't be trying to defend them. But the Americans who did die, they could be trying to defend them. So.
Right. Well, what they were protesting the deaths in El Salvador, not the
deaths in
not
El
the deaths
Salvador
of
really-
El Salvadorian citizens, the deaths in general, and there were Americans that died in that war.
Okay.
Because see, that's what caused it. So that's what they were protesting, the funding of it, not necessarily the policy, but not necessarily not the funding, but the deaths that were happening. That's what they wanted to stop.
Okay, so basically terrorist organization was killing Americans, like 3 Americans.
Can we
Right.
pause it?
Americans and El Salvador.
Yeah.
I mean, like always, the winner write history, isn't it? Like when the United States won the World War I, and when they won World War II, and when they won the Cold War. I mean, everybody was saying, well, it's about the good guys winning. The United States is a good guy winning. Now the United States is trying to do something good through fun good. So
It was benefiting
just-
Americans.
If there are American deaths though, how is there not any
There's
harm?
always
there always
more.
going to be American die in some part of the world. Like now in Iraq, what do we have in Iraq? But soldiers
Journalists
are
are
dying there.
But I think I think the moot point here is were these protesters directly protesting the law, the government policy of sending money to El Salvador, or did they go into the IRS and just decided, well, we're just gonna go inside and just create havoc, you know? That's a